Hey, massive warm welcome. My name's Michaela. I specialize in recommending home care, enhancement selling, all the psychology around persuasion, influencing. So, whether it be in leadership or whether it be in selling or recommending, as I like to call it, my job is to support spas, partners, properties, anybody that's service facing or has to deal with some of those grumpy clients and guests that we know, to help them make sure that they make the best possible decisions. It's no accident that some of my partners have very wisely, intuitively, that might be you, decided to work with the brilliant Sarah and Britt. And indeed, I'm very, very pleased that when I find these oils in particular, recovery balm, whether it be the relax gummies, the focus mints, the scrub, the oils, whichever it might be. I just came from one property up in Vermont and was just delighted to find the full stock. My job was to help the team feel more confident, more empowered, and just ahead of this time when we're coming into the end of the year, beginning of the year, I just want to share with you a couple of the best takeaways that I have been sharing with the team. Brilliant team. There's nothing wrong with nobody. In fact, they're incredibly capable. If anything, over empathetic. And so really when we're trying to help that guest make the good decisions, sometimes we get in the way of ourselves. So I just delivered this little workshop. This is a picture of me. So I come through from psychology. So the field really of looking at habits, looking at barriers, what gets in our way. And because that external environment is continuously changing, that means that we are being moved and pushed and pulled. And when we move and tap away from being in touch with that self-awareness, sometimes we're coming out with an outcome that isn't exactly what we want and isn't creating that win-win. These are some of my partners that I work with. Super proud. It's a team effort. So typically the work that I do is in person or virtual. I come and help reinvigorate, motivate, and really listen to what in particular as part of that process, or look at the process and look at the gaps that are there. But give or take, the nice thing about what the team get to do with me is really look at what's getting in the way. And sometimes that awareness, looking back strategically at those items, those particular points in the blocks and barriers. But what we should be seeing is, because the product is so fabulous, so delectable, smells so fantastic, the team at Acrely really have absolutely blown it out of the water in terms of packaging, marketing, story, in terms of ease of use, in that just those organic elements, the upcycling of the strawberry on the gummy. It's just excellent, and really making sure that every product pretty much instantaneously makes the guest or the client feel the desired outcome. One of the most important things is really making that important connection. I mean, you've seen this is really all mode right now, but important to know why we do things. Why is it important to connect? Systematically, what I see across the board with my vendors, with my boutiques, with my spa properties, is that time taken to really connect with the guest is shortcutted, is minimized. We're just like, oh, busy looking at that task, got to get them on the bed, got to get them in, got to close the sale, got to deal with that person over there, instead of really being present and using all the powers that we have through that mimicry, through that transfer of empathy to perspective taking. And so really just tapping in and asking yourselves and your team, what are we doing? Are we spending enough time? Are we prioritizing? Are we showing and connecting how we'd like it to be done to build those relationships and partnerships? Because we know the product over delivers, but are we making sure that the guest is able to purchase? We know that essentially across the board, at least up to about 90% of guests, clients, customers are not buying a transactional product per se. They're looking for that solution. They're looking for that feeling, that sentiment, and really that care and partnership. There is such a volume of information with everybody being an expert on everything. And the nice thing is that it doesn't have to be that way. We can influence and tap in and really guide the guest accordingly, to be able to make better decisions. We know that, and this is from Forbes 2025, that emotion is the engine behind that experience, that luxury experience. And so even if you might not be in the luxury segment per se, that deep level of engagement, that deep like ripple effect of value that you're creating, to be able to have that repeat business, to be able to have that level of engagement and loyalty, requires that strong level of emotion. And so the emotion is exchanged when we take the time to do it, when we take the time to really be curious and look who's in front of ourselves. So individualizing, understanding the needs specifically, but taking the time to determine them is fundamentally 95% of the sales process. Um, some of the biggest beliefs that I see that get in the way, some of the biggest barriers, even from the offset, and these are often seen when the team might be very, very capable. They might be very well versed. We might not essentially be seeing anything dysfunctional in terms of a symptom. But when we just scratch the surface and look at some of these beliefs, and these can be held by the leaders, and that's quite often the case, in that we don't sell, we're not salespeople. I don't ask my providers or my massage therapists to sell. They're not salespeople, they're healers. Absolutely. But then are we able to leave the guest to make the right decision? Because the answer then is no. The guest knowing best, this idea that they'll know best or that they'll tell us, faulty beliefs, which are really because, we don't want to have the faff. I actually did a question. I asked the team, what's getting in your way? And they're like, nothing. I don't want to, was what I heard, which I thought was a brilliantly honest answer. It's too much effort. Don't really want to talk about the recovery balm, even if they might have used it as an enhancement treatment. And that was their position, which was brilliant. I was so grateful that they told me, because we could unpick exactly what that meant and made it make sense as to why guiding the guest to leave also with a recovery balm, one for themselves and one for a friend, was really central to them having that deep emotional elation. We're seeing really that the guest, typically, this is the most extensive list that I think I've built over the past 20 years. I've been working in recommending. I'm quite proud of it, I must say. But that guests typically don't have that vocabulary to express what they really truly need. They often have very unrealistic expectations. I love how that's growing, because everybody knows everything about CBD, for example, these days, which is brilliant. I love that. It helps those that do know really just easily differentiate themselves. Social inspired expectations of what's meant to happen, what should be taking place. Assuming that guests are, logical, rational decision makers. We've never been more emotional decision makers than really at any other point, I believe, in history, in modern history for sure. And guests not knowing what they need. That typically, I asked a spa that I was working with last week, and they said, yeah, most people ring up and they don't actually know what they want, or they come in the boutique, they don't actually know what they're looking for. It's quite a common situation. They love that exploration. And so guiding and helping them verbalize exactly what the issue is, exactly what they need, when it's done in the right, curious, humanized way, individualized way, that's probably a better word to describe, like asking you, listening to you, and having that exchange by taking time is the most important thing. So I guess you clicked on this thinking that there'd be some kind of silver bullet, there'd be some kind of like new, novel, fabulous. Well, the good news is that yes, there is. And I'm guiding you onto where you need to add the heat, where you need to add the emphasis. And I've come up with this list of 5 things. So essentially, when we're looking to align, or when we're looking to build and really truly recommend or enhance, these 5 elements need to be aligned. And when one is missing or one is underemphasized, then we're kind of like hobbling along a little bit like a three-legged donkey. Not that you see those. There was a terrible joke about three-legged donkey with one eye and 3 legs, winky wonky. Anyway, never mind. Apologies. And as you'd imagine, at 12 o'clock, the one that's written there is trust. And I've already mentioned and succumbed to that. And that's really the biggest piece, the biggest element. And it isn't that your team don't know. It's just, how is it done? How are we prioritizing that, even with each other as leaders? How is it part of our culture that we really, really listen and take the time, that we really truly believe that we actually care? And that can be transferred very, very quickly using simple cues, but the time spent and really that whole face, not over the shoulder, not at pickup, not rushing, but really taking the time to engage and read and look and respond, matching personalities, matching behaviors, matching moods, to create that bigger sense of trust, so that somebody feels comfortable, that somebody knows that you can be trusted to recommend or to deliver that treatment. The second one is timing. Timing is enormous as well, in that when we look at those windows, there are particular moments in time when somebody's open to that buying suggestion. If we're looking at enhancements in particular, before treatment and even up to during treatment can be a very strong time. And then, of course, that recommendation piece, when I, as the guest or the client in treatment, has been able to, because your therapist has asked, what is it? What is your number one priority? How would you like to feel? What's important to you today? But I, as a therapist, truly listening, I've got vulnerable and I've shared that with you, and you've worked on that and you've collected more data on that. And so that recommendation at the end is just a beautiful finish to that partnership that you've built. Value creation, really. And Britt and Sarah have done a phenomenal job of already talking in benefits and highlighting on the website. They've got some great content that really hones into what those outcomes are. How will you feel when you use this product? And that's the language, not what it is, that it's a CBD oil, but really what does it do? That it's not going to have the drowsy, that it's going to relax the muscle and really move you into recovery extraordinarily quickly, as well as hydrating and nourishing your skin. And so that outcome is the language, really the takeaway, the diamond, the golden piece that we're looking for. And so turning round and focusing on outcomes and building that perceived value for each guest or client isn't hard. It's just like a muscle, just stretching and practicing and building on that. Confidence. That's confidence and conviction, two separate things. Self-confidence is critical and really can be divided into, I'd say, about 7 or 8 different pillars. So taking the time to look at that, what triggers are making you wane or move back or not speak, in that poor service isn't something that we typically do, but it's something that we forget to do, forget to say, whether that be between us within a culture or whether it be also in a service environment. And so reminding, recalling, leaning in, generously sharing, because the guest doesn't know best. The guest doesn't know what you have in stock, doesn't know the properties, doesn't know that there's camphor and menthol, doesn't have that, hasn't probably necessarily tried it. So it's for us to do that, but to be forthcoming. And so when we talk about the psychology of recommending, it's fascinating what barriers we can create for ourselves daily. The list is constantly changing. It can typically come from a list that we've collected along the way. But what is it? What is it in particular that's happening right now that we can be aware of and do something so that we can really be as close to the needs of the guest as possible, to really collect those, to nurture those, and be able to build that value so that we can make that difference. And that fundamentally is the most important thing, being aware of what your own personal motivation is, why you do the job that you do, and knowing that and using that as a lever to be able to change your behavior and refocus on good outcomes, changes, rewards. When you see that look on somebody's face, when you see that they're leaving and they're satisfied and they've got something that they knew they needed, but they didn't quite know how to express. Making it relevant. We don't push, we make it make sense, but that's that final one. Does it really fit with the budget? Does it match what the guest has verbalized? Does it fit in with what you'd expect? Are they looking for efficiency? Are they looking for a product that does a couple of things in one, for example? Are they looking for an experience? That could be like one of our more influential kind of characters, guests moving forward. So when we align these 5 elements, it really makes, and honing in, of course, on that trust at the beginning, when we really bring our full attention and our natural curiosity and capture that and build that, but making sure that we're constantly thinking about how we can build more value, then we naturally move through that recommendation process in a most authentic and invaluable way. That is the heart, with emotion there at the center, helping the guest or client feel brilliant, but using Acrely products to be able to get there as a strong lever, in that the power of the products, the power of the plant is very, very strong, tells a beautiful story. And that is, when placed in the right hands, very powerful for both you and for us. Please reach out with any questions. I'd love to answer more, but I just wanted to give you some inspiration that even in times of what appears to be quite prudent, quite stoic times, that isn't the case at all. We see that some of our guests are booking in 2, 3, 4 enhancements in some of our treatments, because we're building that value of why it makes sense. We're emotionally connecting. We're seeing that many gifts have been bought locally. There's many triggers, even though finances might be more limited. That value of local, that value of something that's really a purposeful, thoughtful gift or something that's incredibly practical and useful and life-changing isn't skimped on at all. When people are skimping and making choices, we're keeping them in the transactional by not taking time to emotionally connect with them. So stay strong, believe in you and your team. Look back and look at some of those tweaks in the process that where you might have opportunities to build more rapport, more emotional connection. First, of course, with each other, and then on forward with your guests. But it isn't the recession that's making and helping people choose with their wallet. It's all there. The opportunity is still there. The numbers are still there. It's just those indicators are there. People are choosing, but they want to feel that value. And that's our job to individualize and create that. Thank you. All the very best. Reach out for questions. My name's Michaela, and I'm here to help. Thanks. Bye bye.